Well, since it's a Star Wars game with a Jedi with a lightsaber, obviously there's expectation there. So the first thing is making a lightsaber feel authentic. Usually that means enemies have to die quickly, pretty much. We don't want to be hitting an enemy 10 times with a lightsaber. So that's kind of how we started. We took the basic Stormtrooper and we made him die in one hit, and we made him just a little toy to reflect bolts back at him. So we start from that basic premise, one swing to kill one enemy. And then from there, we just extrapolate the whole cast and we say, okay, now we know not everybody can die in one hit, right? Because that won't be fun over the course of the game. So how do we make that a challenge for the player? So we came up with enemies that can now block a lightsaber. Anybody with a weapon that can block a lightsaber has a block meter. So every time you hit them, they will try to guard your lightsaber, but their block meter will go down. So once you get their block meter down to 0, then their guard is essentially broken and you're allowed to get a real lightsaber hit on them. That's kind of the key thing we wanted to do to make a lightsaber feel like a lightsaber. Like the player's still making progress by hitting them and making contact, but at the same time, you're not hitting their flesh until they're block broken. We want to look at the combat system as, instead of doing the maximum number of hits against an enemy, we want to make the player feel empowered by doing the least amount of hits. So one way to do that is with the parry system. So if you time an incoming attack at the right time, it allows you to pretty much shortcut an enemy and kill them in maybe in one hit. So we have like a good amount of the cast where you could literally kill in one swing if you parry them. If you tap evade, you'll get a small sidestep. So if you want to play it very timing based and use more technique, then you're allowed to sidestep and then attack immediately. But if you want to just get out of danger, then you could double tap circle and you could evade out of danger. So there's kind of that option how you want to play it. Do you want to play it really risky or do you want to just play it safe? Force push is pretty much a crowd control. So that's one way we could throw a lot of numbers of AI against you and then have the player have a tool to deal with that. You could just press the button, use force push, and you could knock them out of the way. But if you are aware of the environment, you could push them in a wall, they'll take a wall reaction, and now they'll be more vulnerable to a follow-up attack. Force pull is kind of the inverse, as you would imagine, but it's another tool for us as designers to give enemies other weaknesses or strengths to another button press. So some enemies you could pull and they'll stumble forward, or some enemies will, if you try to pull them, they'll actually attack out of it. So it's kind of the inverse, and we wanted that easy to digest power. If you don't push, you pull them, right? If you can't pull them, you push them. So it's kind of that yin and yang. There's some nuance to force slow because if you tap it, you'll become force slowed. But if the player swings or does any action after that, the enemy that was slowed will immediately come out of that slow. But if you hold the button down and try to slow them over 5 seconds, if you get to that threshold, then they'll become slowed for 10 seconds. And whatever you do, whatever action you do, they'll still be slowed. So you could take them out of the equation. So you're essentially thinning the herd. But there's nuance. So there's like a risk reward in our combat system. You can't just mash up an ability and you'll always get the same results. You'll have to find a way to use that at the right time. First, we had it where the force power bar regened, and we found that players would just sit back and let it regen and just spam force powers. So we eventually made it where it doesn't regen, but if you are on the offensive and you start to attack enemies and kill enemies, then you will get some of that bar back. And depending who you hit or who you parry, you'll get more of that bar back. So we encourage you to not turtle, but be offensive and attack. So every time you use a force ability or a focus attack, you'll use force meter, right? So you kind of have to manage that as well in the play space. Like the freedom the player has to do in our combat system depends on actually, who's in the combat space. So we try to design all the AI to be these kind of chess pieces that could do different functionality and have different weaponizing abilities. So I could take a flame beetle, I could pull him towards me, and then I could chuck him at somebody and he becomes a bomb. Or I could push the flame trooper into a wall and he falls and his backpack will blow up and hit anybody around him. Or I could slow down a bolt using force slow, and then I could pull somebody towards the bolt and they'll get hit as they force pull towards the bolt. So you could do stuff like that. And then once you power up your character, then you could just do that on a bigger scale. That was always the decision, not to make it a combo-based game where you're doing multiple inputs trying to get these advanced techniques out of. It was all about precision and efficiency, kind of like a Jedi. They're highly trained warriors. So we wanted to translate that into the control scheme and into the moveset, where we just give you very situational and specific abilities that you kind of have to figure out over the course of the game when and who to use them against.